Hey there! It's what? It's Monday. It's noon. It's a new week. Last week we did a bunch of these lives where we jumped in to talk to people about their most unique or memorable animal encounter, and today will be no different. These have proven to be so fun and popular that I am going to keep doing them at least for a few more days and see how it goes. So I am waiting for our guest. And meanwhile, there he is. All right, Dustin, I see you popped in already. So if you want to send in your request, Dustin, to join, I will approve that and we'll get you going here. And while we're waiting for Dustin to do that, I want to make sure everyone who's joining us knows why we're doing this and what has caused us to do this. Well, I do have someone requesting to go live with me, but it's not Dustin, and Dustin is today's guest, so I got to wait for him to send in his request. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so while Dustin's getting that figured out and gets his request sent in, I want to say that this has been so much fun. So last Friday was endangered. Let me figure that out. So Dustin, if you leave the live and then come back to it, it'll give you a prompt saying request to join. Also down at the very bottom, there should be an opportunity for two faces that are connected, sort of, or overlapping. And you can click on that, I think, and that gives you the opportunity to request to go live also. Let's see if... you don't. Oh wait, maybe I can go ahead and send a request. Maybe I'm adding you now. Maybe I figured it out on my end. No, it didn't work. All right. So while we wait for the connection to happen, he's got the wave. All right, we'll wait, see if we can connect. Anyhow, last Friday was Endangered Species Day. As a communicator for wildlife and wildlife conservation, I do a lot of talks about endangered species animals and Endangered Species Day and animals. And it's one of those things where with Endangered Species Day coming up, I didn't want to just kind of go the same route. I know for myself, my own experience, it's a connection we make with animals and those moments we make with them. They can be most impactful and sometimes change the direction of our life, what we're interested in, what we want to do, saving that species. So I started doing this with a wide variety of people last week leading into Endangered Species Day. It was so much fun. It just kind of kept going. And so here we are on a whole week later, and we've got Dustin joining us. Let's see if he responds to that one. Waiting for the Dinosaur Whisperer. Dustin, hey.
Oh, hey.
There's your chin.
Hi.
How are you doing, sir?
Great. Continue. I was enjoying your intro as to what the heck this is and what you've been doing.
Well, okay, so what the heck this is, what I've been doing. It started with this idea that I need to take a different angle and kind of talk about the connections we make with animals, recognizing that it's not just those of us in the animal care world or conservation world that make those connections. There are a wide variety of people. So I've had Stephanie Arney, host of Mutual Omaha's Wildlife Kingdom, on. I've had Kelly Ripa on because I've been on her show. She offered to come on mine, which is not really a show. And then I've also spoken to Mallory, who's a great science communicator. And then several people, too, in the former zookeeper world or still doing zookeeper stuff. So everyone's kind of got their own angle, but each of them have had these great stories as to an animal encounter that was memorable. And I love hearing these stories because I recognize those moments. I've had plenty of them in my career of doing what I do. So I figured, Dustin was doing his Dino 101 for how long did that go on for?
Oh, I did 50 straight days. It was great.
I mean, how do you even prepare for a marathon like that? I mean,
it gave me something to focus on every single day during this quarantine, right? If I hadn't had that, I mean, I work in museum consulting, so obviously museums are closed right now. If I hadn't had the Dino 101 to do every day, I don't know what I would have focused on. And it was great to bring together people to nerd out every day. It was very wholesome and I loved it. Now I don't know what to do with my time because we just ended. But we're going to start Mesozoic Monday. So every Monday starting June 1st, we're going to pick it back up.
Well, I'm glad I could grab you this Monday then. I got to say, in this household, when news broke, you were no longer doing Dino 101. There may have been a tear or two and a sort of a silent, not silent, a quiet no that came from some people in this household. So, but I can understand.
You were one of my favorite guests, you and Acacia. That was a good time. So I'm sorry. Be back. It's like Jordan. I don't know if anyone out there has been watching the Last Dance documentary. You got to go out on top. We did 50 straight days. It seemed like the right time to wind it down.
I think that was a good choice, and it's always fun to see what you come up with next. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Just so everyone, so we kind of touched on it, we kind of fell into the conversation already. Real quick, for my audience members who may not know you, which would be astounding to me if they didn't, because we're doing stuff. But yeah. What do you do, Dustin? Who are you?
I'm Dustin. So I
have worked. Thanks for letting us know. So the next thing I'm going to talk. We're done here.
I work with museums. I've always worked in museums. I'm a science communicator. My specialty is dinosaurs. I have a YouTube channel. I'm the Dinosaur Whisperer here on Instagram. My goal is really to get people as excited as jazzed about life and science as possible. And dinosaurs are kind of like a gateway drug to science. And I think they're a great equalizer in that because we can't go and view one, like I can't go watch, you can go watch African lions on the savannah, but I can't go watch a T-Rex. I think it opens the door for a lot of like fun conversations about evolution of biology and life itself on an even playing field. And that like an expert really has never seen one, just like if you're 4 years old and you've seen a picture in a book, there's a leveling of playing field there that lends to, I think, great conversations about science and conservation and animals.
That's awesome. And I love it. And we've known each other. I remember we figured this out in your program. Was it 2013?
I was going to say about 7 years. So that checks.
That's about right. Yeah. So either way, and it's been so fun to follow along with you on your adventures and what you do and all the SciComm you do, and your passion for dinosaurs has always been so fun. But and you kind of talked a little bit too. One thing I like to do with this is kind of the overall thing we're all dealing with is how the pandemic has impacted us.
Yeah.
But you kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
So before we get into the animal part of it and the passion, the excitement for animals and dinosaurs and all that we're going to talk about shortly, one question I like to ask everybody up top is, how has this impacted you? And you kind of mentioned it that you did Dino 101, but I mean, obviously you are normally in New York, but you're not in New York now, right?
Correct. So normally I'm doing museum consulting, which obviously museums are closed right now, and I do a fair amount of tours at the American Museum of Natural History, and obviously both of those things I can't do right now.
And wait, but also in New York, weren't you guys doing like weekly verses too?
Oh, that's true. Once a month we do a live science debate show.
Right, and that was pretty awesome.
I mean, we've been doing it virtually, and they've been fun. It's just different, obviously, over Zoom than a live on stage show. But yes, so I was lucky enough. My dad owns an Airbnb here in Ohio that is vacant because no one's traveling, and I figured this might be a more chill space to hang out than literally in the epicenter of the coronavirus in Queens. And so I'm here, and I was like, what can I do to stay sharing my passion to give people some sort of like fun and escape during this? And so we started doing the Dino 101s, where we just nerded out for an hour every day over Zoom with special guests, much like, you, Rick, for instance, tying different types of science and different types of conservation into discussions about dinosaurs. And it has been, and it still will continue to be a ton of fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
and that's one thing I've always admired about you, and it's the ability to adapt. You've done a wide variety of different things, all within the same sort of energy, vein, and passion of what you are about. But you find the avenue in which you can use to express that, and bravo for you for adapting to our current normal.
I think it's kind of like baked into my professional career, in that like a lot of the jobs that I do and a lot of things that I do, at least online, didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. So like something that I've kind of been making up as I go. So I feel like in that vein, I think I was a little bit more ready to adapt and change rather than if I was like doing the same job in the same way, for 15 years straight.
Yeah, that's true. I guess like you said,
it can be stressful.
But yeah, kind of baked into the idea of what you do anyways. And and when you were doing stuff with one of the other companies you were working with, I appreciated that you let me tag along one of your tours, and I appreciate the fact that that was kind of an idea of how can we give the museum experience something fresh and new and current. And so I think, as you said, that kind of mindset, that kind of way, you've always kind of taken that angle for education and communications. Yeah. Although we're inside in the pandemic, at least we have technology to allow us to utilize our ability to be creative and using other tools. So.
And it's been a great opportunity to meet and network with a bunch of other people doing similar stuff in science and conservation and science communication. So that, in that end, it's been good. You got to take some good out of this if you can, and that's one thing.
Right. Exactly. Well, cool. All right. So the reason we're here, the reason I do this.
Yeah.
I mean, take a drink of Mountain Dew.
I'm on coffee. Go ahead.
The reason we're doing this course is to ask people about their most memorable animal experience. And, you know, you can run the gamut from a wide variety of things. We've heard a wide variety of different stories. So what Dustin, was your most memorable animal experience?
Well, I have you to thank for it, so I'll preface it by that. Let me also start by saying that, like, one of the reasons I mentioned this a moment ago, but one of the reasons I love thinking about dinosaurs with respect to evolutionary biology is because they have all these crazy features, combinations of which we don't really see anymore. And so it's really fun to think about what these adaptations were used for. How do they survive? How do they hunt? How did they take care of their young, right? And so just keep that in mind as we go back about 7 years, the first time I met you at the San Diego Zoo.
Yeah.
And you were nice enough to show me around for a couple hours, and you introduced me to an animal I did not know existed, right? We all have blind spots with everything we do. And even as someone who's in like animal and science Twitter and thinks about animals, works in natural history museum, biology, all that jazz, I did not know that this particular animal existed at all. And so when I saw it, it was one of those moments where I just like paused, because it blew, literally, well, not literally, because then I wouldn't be here talking about it, but metaphorically, it blew my mind.
Metaphorically.
Animal I'd never seen, and I feel like I want to keep on describing it, see if people can figure out what it is.
Might as well go with it, man. Go with it. I'll just sit here and listen.
Okay, because much like many dinosaurs, it had a bunch of different features that I knew those individual features existed, but I'd never seen them put together in one animal. It was something with eyes that were incredibly mysterious that drew you in. It was something that seemed to move with purpose and agility, but in like such a beautiful stealth-like way that made you think, oh, this is really beautiful and cute, I want to pet it, but also, oh, if I get too close, this thing could probably rip my head off. Right. And it was kind of like, I remember describing it afterwards as kind of a mashup of a cat, a dog, a mongoose, and a bear, like smashed together with a tail. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but its tail is about the length of the rest of its body.
That is correct, sir. Yes. Okay. From nose to rump is the same length as tip of tail.
Correctly?
What's that?
All right. I'm seeing people guessing correctly in the chat.
Oh,
somebody guessed the name of the individual animal. Rick, you want to tell them the name, because I still don't know which way it's pronounced or if it's both.
Well, we have some photographic evidence.
Oh, okay.
Right there. So I'm covering you a little bit with my box. So this is I don't believe this is the first time we met. I think this is the second time you were at the zoo, but I honestly don't remember for sure. I didn't check the timestamp on the photo. But this is in what is now no longer the Children's Zoo because it's being rebuilt. But that's San Diego Zoo in the Children's Zoo, and that's my buddy over my shoulder there. That's east of the Fusa. We can pop in a little bit, and that photo doesn't really do justice for anybody who doesn't know. And to go back to what you were saying, there's two ways you can say the name: Fusa or Fasa. The English way tends to be Fasa. The French is Fusa, and the French language is definitely an influence in Madagascar. Because the French government had ruled Madagascar until I think the 60s roughly, and they pulled out. So either term is okay and acceptable, whichever way you want to say it. But I think I have an image, since we're talking about his tail. Yeah. So you can see the body from nose to rump is about 3 feet, give or take on average. And then the length of the tail is about 3 feet. And it's not a prehensile or grasping tail, but I have seen Issa, when climbing around and moving through the trees or whatever, he will throw his tail up against a branch to kind of counter push. So not fully a prehensile or grasping appendage, but definitely something that he can counter on, and it's muscular enough at the base that he can really push to either lean on or get a balance.
Rudder, I feel like.
Yes.
Would rudder be a decent comparison?
Yeah, and a lot of documentation on the Fusa so this species is ridiculously fast in the trees and on the ground for their size, and it is documented that as they're floating, not really flying, whatever you want to say, through the trees at a very quick speed, as they maneuver to catch their prey, which is lemurs, also a very agile animal, they use that tail in flight to help kind of rudder the body a little bit as they're leaping and moving. Now, it wouldn't be something that as they're traveling through the air, they could turn their tail also and turn heavily, but they can alter somewhat the direction of where the front feet are going to land by how they're moving that tail.
Yeah, I mean, again, I didn't know any of this until I saw this animal, and I hope you have more pictures, and I also implore everyone to just Google Fasa after this, because like I saw it up close, and then I went down a wormhole, and just the images of babies and their eye, like just spend 10 minutes just looking at fossa images and you'll be hooked, I promise.
Right. So, oh, this one, that's too big. Too close, too close. But that's Issa's face. Beautiful eyes. So that's one thing, too, where you had mentioned it kind of looks like an animal put together by a bunch of different others.
Yeah.
People look at the eye, it's a very fine slit. And so when Western scientists really first sort of, came across this species, the island Madagascar, for those who don't know, off the coast of Africa, the way that plate tectonics move, it's believed it was actually attached to India 10 million plus years ago and moved towards Africa. So it wasn't actually broken off of Africa. So with that knowledge, a lot of the flora and fauna there, it was believed it probably has primitive roots in some old world, Asia type species that then evolved separately and differently on their own. So it was believed that the fossa was a primitive cat, a primitive felid. So when it was initially put in the taxa order of things, that is where it was placed, in the primitive felid family. And then I don't know at what point for sure. At some point, though, it was deemed, no, they're more closely related to mongoose. And then 2007, I believe it was, due to DNA studies and everything else we have now in science, it was like, nope, these aren't related to anybody. And they got their own scientific family called Eupleridae. And in that family, I think it might vary. I believe it's about 6 different other carnivores that are found on Madagascar. That the common name seems to imply that they are a mongoose or they're a civet, but truly they all are from the same lineage that the fossa is in. So
I like anything in Madagascar. I don't want to say you put an asterisk next to like everything there, because like you mentioned, it's been an island, and island ecology and evolution is very obviously specific to that island. And because Madagascar has been isolated for so long, you get amazing creatures that look not so much like anything else on the planet. And I don't know that there's one that is a better example of that than the fossa.
Yeah, I mean, and really in general, I think a lot of things on Madagascar, so we as a general public, kind of like with dinosaurs for in your world, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone's familiar with T-Rex, everyone's familiar with, Brontosaurus, Triceratops, whatever. Those are the well-known megafauna of that sort of realm. You go into the animal side of things, it's lions and tigers, and you get further down, there's a few you don't know about. So the fossa is kind of like this, well, not really well known, but somewhat well known carnivore in Madagascar. But when you start really diving down into other flora and fauna of Madagascar, plants and smaller animals, insect species, it's just amazing when you get this glimpse at what does the life on this planet look like when it's isolated for that long. And it's just, from Tenrex and everything else, it's just like, what am I looking at? I mean, it's truly fascinating stuff.
Do you know, do fossas hunt things outside of lemurs, or is it like almost exclusively that is their main food source?
That is from what I have read from the documentation, there's been limited studies, honestly, because they're fairly elusive in the wild. Where they do still live is very limited space and hard for humans to get into. So there are a few researchers that have done studies that have published some work. And from what we can best tell from that work is lemurs are their food of choice. It is a meal for them. But they'll catch and eat whatever they can. There's it's like, if there's a bug, I'll eat it. There's a rodent or a lizard, I'll eat that. They're not too, they're specialized in how they can hunt a lemur, but they're not too specific on what needs to be on the menu if they're hungry. To give others that are watching sort of an idea too, there was at one time, because there's fossil records, and it wasn't that long ago, a giant fossa. So this is something much, much larger, related in the same family. So you can look this up there, an extinct species now. But I can't even wrap my head around what that must have looked like and how terrifying that must have been for the local Malagasy people, having to deal with that. And I don't know if the stories come from the giant fossa when it was in existence, in historic times, or if it's from the fossa now. But there are stories out there, or cultural stories within Madagascar from the Malagasy people. The fossa is kind of held in the same regard as the wolf was in the European culture that came to America. So you have the big bad wolf, Little Red Riding Hood, and the Three Pigs. Everyone had to deal with the wolf. It was always the villain that's going to do something bad. The fossa kind of filled that role for a lot of stories in the Malagasy culture. And so it's kind of interesting to again look at this as the largest mammalian carnivore on that island continent, and then and have that relation of understanding why this was such a feared animal. So it's very impressive.
Yes. Speaking of impressive, I'm just now remembering back to that first encounter, and like I assume almost everyone watching right now has been to a zoo and they've walked up to an enclosure. And sometimes the animals are sleeping, sometimes they're moving around. But I remember walking up to it with you, and we were maybe 15, 20 feet away. And I assume Isa, or Isa? How do you
Isa, yeah.
Isa could smell you and knew you because out they came. Is Isa he?
Yeah, he's a male, yes.
Out he came, like, and was right up on the fence in wanting to interact with you in a way that, like, that doesn't happen often for, like, someone just at the zoo. Obviously, you had a relationship that you built with this particular animal, because I think I've seen pictures of you with Isa when he was a baby.
Yes, yeah. So his personal story is when he was born, his mother did not take care of him and his brother. And so within the first 24 hours, he came to the Children's Zoo, which is where, at the time, our nursery was established. And so he was raised there. And so I got to see him when he was a day old, basically. Tiny, no bigger than a small rat, eyes closed. And got to see him grow. And then when it was realized genetically he probably wasn't going to be a viable option for the breeding program, they allowed us to work with him as an ambassador to see how that would work out. And as we know, at that time, we didn't know of anyone else who had worked with the FUSA in that capacity. So we really didn't know what we were going to get. But yes, he's definitely a relationship-based individual. And that relationship really allowed us to work with him to come out and help educate people in person. So this photo here is he's out. We had a cork tree in the middle of the Children's Zoo he loved to climb. And so we would take him out and allow guests to kind of see him moving in the tree and gathering around and doing his thing. You can see that big giant nose and those eyes, the ears, everything about the body. I go back to this photo here, if it comes, yeah, so you can see that the upper arm will be the upper arm in the FUSA there. Massive muscles. The people look at this animal and he's 35 pounds, give or take, and they're like, well, why is it such a formidable predator? And it's like, no, you don't understand. Not only is he jacked with the amount of muscle per body size, but where these tendons connect, and it's hard for me to really point out from this angle we're in right now, but if you follow what would be the front side, the leading side of his upper arm or his bicep, down to his lower arm where it's bent 90 degrees, where that tendon connects in the bone and on the bone is a better leverage point than humans' arms, and it gives him basically more leverage on the joint for less muscle. Now you take into consider how much muscle is there for an animal that size. Very powerful. Even in play with him, I've never worked with an animal that has made me take a moment and go, wow, that the amount of strength you could feel through him when he would just grab on to play with you was just so much to be respected and not to be taken for granted that relationship exists. I would never want to come across a FUSA I didn't know that was an unprotected situation, that's for sure.
I can't imagine one of the greatest benefits of the work that you've done is actually getting to physically interact, because I still remember, like I said, I saw it and it looks like these combination of features I've never seen. And obviously it's not like a dinosaur or dinosaur-like, but it immediately took me to a different place in time, like a place when animals that aren't alive anymore were walking around. And I felt like transported in that moment to a different, like, biological era. And I can't imagine, again, what it was like then actually interact face-to-face and with its body and feel that strength. Like, does that almost feel like you're being transported in time? Or maybe that's just me always thinking about dinosaur time.
No, I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. I think for me, because with the work I do and the level of intimacy that we have on a daily basis when working with these animals and the relationship that's built, it's more we're connected with the individual. And when we work with these different species, there's definitely an excitement for the knowledge and for each individual species and how they're structurally existing and how they've evolved at these adaptations. As far as like that feeling of transport of time, like you're talking about, not so much, at least in my head. I'm only speaking for myself. There's a team of people that work with him and a team of people that work with all the animals that we have. But for me, myself, it was really just because I think starting with him at such a young age and being there with him as he's growing, for me, it was a different sort of perspective and relationship and way of looking at his existence. But I can definitely see, like, when I go and look at other Malagasy species, species from Madagascar, I'm just like, what an amazing world that must be in it. And sometimes I have to pinch myself and realize, and I got to work with a tiny little piece of that world too, and it's just an amazing opportunity. There's many species that I've worked with over my career, but early on, and even midway through my career, I never would have guessed that I would have worked with a FUSA hands-on like this. And another animal would be the pangolin too. So, I mean, it's one of those species where it's like, you never know what you're going to be doing, and all of a sudden, like, there it is, and it's an opportunity that I don't think I'll ever look back on. You know, having taken it for granted, it was really, really amazing.
And I assume it's great to have those kind of like shots of inspiration as your career progresses. Work with animals that like remind you why you do this in the first place.
Oh yeah, yeah, and then you know, here I'm hosting you. Well, no, but this is the example. This is the example of why the work we do of introducing people to species in a more intimate setting than just on a screen or on TV is so important. Because here you are, someone who's a SciComm professional. You work with museums. You do all these things. That is, you know, and it's like, and you come to the zoo and you like what you're seeing, and you're excited about stuff. But then to see how you reacted, and still to this day, 7 years later, the energy you have for your moment of coming across Isa and having the chance to learn about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what I really enjoy. This is what I live for, is when I see people get excited about something they either didn't know existed or they'd heard about but didn't know they'd ever see in person. And that's where the impact comes in for, you know, zoological facilities that have ambassador animals that make those connections, because that's when we get people to start talking about it.
Yeah.
This is not the first time you've talked about the Fusa and your excitement for them. And so, and other people, and right here on our stream, I had no idea they existed, or, you know, how big are they? These people now want to know about it too. And so it's one of those things where, you know, there's an impact there, and for me, that's the joy too. Whether it's a hedgehog or a Fusa or whatever, is seeing people get connected like that. And I know that's what you do too for dinosaurs.
We try.
I know.
I mean, it's a different game because they're not here. Well, at least except for birds. By the way, everyone watching, dinosaurs are not extinct. Birds are literally dinosaurs. They're living dinosaurs. So all non-avian, non-flying dinos went extinct. But there's a fair amount of them around today, including Rio. Is that correct?
Rio, my buddy Rio, the Amazon parrot. Yeah, you met him too.
Yeah.
And earlier, you would appreciate it. I know you were busy with your stuff, but earlier in the series of animal encounters, Kelly Ripa's animal encounter was with a cassowary.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So I figured you'd appreciate that. You know.
Was that in the wild?
No, thankfully. Okay. I would have been terrifying to hear that story.
Yeah.
No, she was at another zoological facility about 10 years ago, and
more like Ripa in half. Am I right?
Right. Well, I mean, you know, she's pretty strong. She works out a lot, so she might have been able to bob and weave. You know, she does her thing. Okay, so Dustin, we're getting close to time here, but I do want to share one other thing that I think that, again, going back to seeing people's reactions when meeting an animal. And I know this is not the animal you chose to talk about, but there was a time where I also got to see you meet another animal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And this. And look at your face there, and then the expression here. That's the moment right there. Is, you know, so that's Baba, our pangolin. He has since passed, but you had the opportunity to meet him as well. And I came across these photos. I was looking through my stuff trying to get something with you and myself and Isa. And I came across this one. I just had to share it. I mean, that expression right there tells it all for me.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, dude, I appreciated that day so much. And strangely, another animal with a tail that's about as long as its body. Like, you can't see in this picture, but the tail is wrapped all the way around this woman, like touching the front. And I remember it had a big snot bubble. Well,
yes, a lot of insectivores do have snot bubbles because there's a lot of moisture coming out of the nose because they're always sticking their nose in dirt looking for insects. And we're talking about the penguin.
Not shaming. I mean, just go on. Not, I don't care.
and just to clear up, this woman holding the pangolin is my wife, April.
Yes,
so.
I knew that. I didn't know if you wanted to broadcast that.
Fair enough.
This woman, whoever this woman,
this khaki wearing person.
Yes.
All right. Let's see if we can get back to just me. There we go. All right. So anyhow, is there anything else you'd like to add about your Fusa experience or your love for Fusa?
A couple things. I guess when you first asked me to do this, I was like, I immediately thought to live animal encounters, like what I've seen out in nature. But I mean, I think this speaks to the power that zoos have. I think a lot of times, people don't understand all the great work and the conservation work that zoos do, and how a lot of animals that are in them would not be able to survive in the wild anymore. And ICE is a great example of using that animal to inspire more people to care about life and care about animals and care about conservation. So I know I'm excited to go back to museums when they reopen. I'm incredibly excited to start visiting zoos again because like you mentioned, you never know what you're going to see, whether it's an animal you've never seen or an animal you have seen interacting or moving or behaving in a different way. And it's just those moments of inspiration that you don't know where they're going to come from that end up in conversations like this. And now I know both of us are basically doing what we love, getting people as excited as possible about the natural world. So I can't wait to get back to doing that IRL rather than just through a screen.
Exactly. Well, very good. I appreciate that. One last thing, because this was all kind of kicked off with Endangered Species Day, I'm also asking people, I know it's not quite exactly your wheelhouse, but I'm sure you have some brilliant words for this. With Endangered Species Day being one day out of the year, we always kind of really focus on that. And the question I usually get back is, what can I do? Or, what is I as a regular citizen or a student or a kid, what can I do to help out with endangered species? You can be as broad as you want on this, but is there anything you would like to offer to anybody who's thinking about what can they do for these species, or what could they do for the FUSA, or anything that you have to offer from a different perspective than just me saying it? What would you offer up to someone that asked?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if people are familiar with you, you talk all about big picture ways to get involved in conservation. One very simple way is to follow and support people that are doing stuff like this in the field, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Twitter, people that are scientists that work with animals that are supporting biology and conservation. Support them, whether it's just following them or supporting their platforms monetarily, because the more people that we have doing this and the more voices they are, those voices get echoed and amplified, and that only helps. So that's a very simple, literally from your home right now.
It is, and I think a lot of people underestimate the power of that. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's one of those things where I've experienced it in my years of doing social media, that someone will say, I had no idea that existed. I didn't know that was a problem for that animal. And they get involved in some way, or they get others involved and excited about it by talking about it. And it's been proven time and time again with the rhino horn concern that education does have an impact. Rhino horn sales went down a lot once we started getting some star power behind it, educating people. So yes, something as simple as following and supporting those doing the conservation work on social media or wherever is impactful. So thank you, Dustin. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Rick, because you are that person. Well, one of those people, and so
I'm one.
do stuff and support you in any way I can.
Appreciate it, man. Well, I will let you go. We're running out of time here, so I'll let you go. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. Stay healthy, my friend, and we'll be in touch for more fun adventures, I'm sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
All right, everybody. Well, again, thank you for joining me. We had quite a few people on today. I'm going to adjust this just a little bit now that we got more screen. If you have any questions about the FUSA or any other species, you're always welcome to send me a message, leave a comment here, whatever it may be. I encourage you, if you aren't already, please go follow Dustin. He's very active on Instagram and Twitter, and he's got his YouTube account as well. Always a good time to learn about dinosaurs and fun things. He's got a really great energy about him when it comes to educating others and being engaging with his audience. So with that, I will simply say on this Monday, it's kind of weird for some of us. Mondays aren't really Mondays anymore, but for some of us still working, it is, but in a different way. But I don't care. I'm still going to mark that calendar. I'm still going to keep up with my routines and make sure I feel good about where I am in life. And I hope you do too. I hope you have an awesome Monday. Look at today as an opportunity to start a new week, start some new good habits, start the opportunity to grow and expand your mind. And just be healthy. It's a lot of stress we're all dealing with right now. So just stay healthy. We'll be in touch. I've got another person lined up for tomorrow. In fact, right now the week is already kind of filling up. So it looks like we might be doing this at least for one more week. I'll be posting who's coming up next on my stories. And other than that, I'm going to say see you later and have a good one, everybody.
Oh.